Book Impressions, Middle England by Jonathan Coe, Part 3. The irony is that when there was less of a diverse set of writers, let's say 50, 80 years ago in the English literature, the themes were very diverse. So we had mainly white men writing about all kinds of subjects, from Somerset Maugham's, homosexuality to Hemingway's masculinity to Steinbeck's uh, definitely female emancipation urges within the California setting of the 1930s. So we have a lot of diversity. Today, we have a very diverse set of writers and a very conform, one-sided, tyrannical, political uh, um, theme tyranny, let's say, to call it like that. So what I'm trying to say here is paraphrasing the character in the book, that the old woman that talks about the tyranny of political correctness. I think we live in a tyranny of political correctness, or wokeism, because the themes are all the same. Like, you have to be tolerant of everything except white culture. You have to accept traditions, except, of course, white tradition, and so forth. So, for example, what I like about progressive culture, and I consider myself very progressive, is to try to break new grounds. What wokeism, or this co-cause political correctness, I don't know, maybe that's the word they use in Britain. This message that is being emanated from the media and the entertainment industry is very conform, very tyrannical, very one-sided. Like, let's say you have to appreciate, black women's braids as a cultural artifact of their expression when they walk around with braids, for example. But then, white dress or whatever conform dress culture, that's not good. So I think I am not interested in traditions per se. If something's 2,000 years old, whether it's Chinese or black or African American or Native American, I don't care. I want something new. And I think the newness was actually proliferated back then when, and I'm paraphrasing Coe's character here, saying, the white middle-aged man's writing class is finally over. Well, when that class was writing, and they weren't all middle-aged, actually, they were usually pretty young, but they were very progressive. They were trying to break ground. And it's that, that class of people, that class of culture that emanated from Western culture that enabled all these new ideas and civil rights. And now we're falling back into racism and cultural tyranny, where we all have to accept just one-sided views. Everything is okay except white culture. We have to cherish, whatever century-old traditions, thousand-year-old traditions, Native American traditions, whether they slaughtered each other or not, whether they suppressed their women or not, doesn't matter. It's Native American, it's good, or Native Australian or Native New Zealand, and so forth. Like, no, we don't care. Like, we want new things. Like, there are new ways societies being organized as we speak because we have new technologies. Now, this is not part of the book. This is my thoughts on this whole subject, which is, look, progressive ideas, they are reflecting a society that is pregnant with potential. And I think our society, whilst pregnant with potential from a technology perspective, is actually deteriorating from a socioeconomic perspective. Like, we're all one-sided. We consider ourselves, let's say, living in a free society when we're not. We consider ourselves, we point out to the others, like, China is not free, America is not free, coming from Europe. We Americans say Europe's not free, when nobody's really free. And I think that's what I would like to see writers write about, this tyranny, this and I want to just say, with respect to the death of Jürgen Habermas, who was sort of the continuation of Kant and reason in the 20th century, and definitely a very important philosopher for particularly post-war Germany. But one thing that he always was very adamant about is that the discourse, the dialogue, is the source of truth, and that there is reason to be found in dialogue. And I think, to me, that, by the way, that's what I think Jonathan Coe's book is affecting me with. So I think, I don't know if he's influenced by Habermas or that type of, sort of second Frankfurt School philosophy, but it certainly gives me that impact. It has that impact on me because it's a dialogue between very different characters talking about the political situation and the social situation in Britain in the 2010s. And I think I'm able to synthesize a truth vector here, something tangible. Like there is a lot of hypocrisy, there's a lot of confusion, there's poverty, and there is a tyranny of thought emanating from the multicultural metropolitan center, in this case London, but it's not multicultural and it's definitely not multifaceted. It's very one-sided. It's anti-white, anti-tradition, anti-British tradition, it's the inverse of nationalism, and it creates its own tyranny then, because you're not able to open up new avenues here. For example, question meritocracy and say, look, we need to compete with China on technology. How do we do that? How do we create better human beings? How do we foster reason through dialogue without being always, without having prejudice and being sort of partisan-minded and channeled immediately into left-right things? Like, how do we overcome these obstacles? Like, those kinds of questions can't even be discussed. I mean, you just look at something like the Oscars. You look at something like a typical, CNN or BBC, or in Germany, ZDF or ARD show. It's all like there is a certain conformity of thinking, and there is no room for, or very little room. There are people, of course, that are trying to break that, but then they're being chastised immediately. They're still being canceled, maybe not directly like during the pandemic. So I guess my conclusion is, this would be my impression from the book. We're still talking about book impressions here, so I don't want to go too far with my thoughts, but I think, Coe's doing a great job in bringing different characters with different perspectives into the scene. And I think most importantly, he's setting the tone, which is there is a one-sided culture emanating from the multicultural center of London, which is very ironic. And there is this literary critic that interviews one of the protagonists, and she says, are we finally done with the middle-aged white man writers? And the writer is kind of trying to say, well, in fact, what's wrong with that? Like, the ideas are what matter. It doesn't matter who writes it. And if it's just men, then it's just men. And if it's just women, it's just women. What we care about is the ideas. And the society is pregnant with potential, but we need to reflect that in our literary context. And I think we're falling into sort of almost like a Soviet or Orwellian type dictatorship, propaganda ship, where we can't really open ourselves up to new ideas, and therefore the arts are becoming very boring. And that's what we're seeing in literature, and that's what we're definitely seeing in Hollywood. Now, I hope this is going to go away. Jonathan Coe is a great example of a good piece of literature, but it's getting more and more difficult to find good literature. And I don't think that's because there's a lack of good writers. It's just because, again, the propaganda machine, this multicultural, one-sided thinking, which is, number one, against any kind of tradition, against white or established tradition, but then for any other tradition. So it's just replacing one tradition with another, replacing one power structure with another. That's boring. That's not interesting. That's exactly what the Soviets did. They replaced one power, the Tsar, with their power structure. And it was the same thing. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's what writers should be writing about. So I guess this is my conclusion here. And I'm doing this on the fly. There's no script or anything. But I would say, as part 3 of my impressions, what we need is writers who take the pen and write about what society is really about, and not just conform to these one-sided, wokeist, or political correct, tyrannical views. Thank you.